Hey everybody, it's Atheist for the Cause here, and I'm waiting for the Project Veritas video to drop. It was supposed to drop about a half an hour ago. I don't see it yet, so I'm going to do a video, and I'm sure it'll drop in the middle of this video. So I will be doing a response video to Project Veritas, the American Pravada Part 2 that's about to come out. And just to put out some speculation there, I'll show it here, where James O'Keefe tweeted, "The person in the second CNN video, you've all seen him and you know his name. We release under 30 minutes. Now, a lot of people are predicting Brian Stelter, which would be amazing if it was him. I think another person that would be interesting would be like Anderson Cooper, because he's a huge name that everybody knows. And he's also, former CIA. So anyways, let's get to some other big news that we can go over while we wait. It says breaking: CNN facing a $100 million lawsuit over botched Russia story, which I covered. It says the chickens have come out home to roost for anti-Trump propaganda CNN. In addition to being exposed for shoddy reporting, CNN's financial existence is under threat based on a new bombshell reported by the New York Post about a potential $100 million lawsuit. The specter of a $100 million libel suit scared CNN into retracting a poorly reported story that slimed an ally of President Trump's and forcing out the staffers responsible for it, the Post has learned. Now something messed up here, so they're missing a paragraph, but they're basically talking about I think a Time Warner AT&T merger, which would be interesting because wasn't it? I think it was like, don't quote me on this, but it was something like Time Warner and Comcast had tried to merge in the past or something, and it was blocked because of antitrust laws. Like, they didn't want to create a monopoly, basically. So then there's CNN immediately caved after Scaramucci, a financial and frequent network guest, cried foul and threatened to take legal action, sources said Tuesday. This guy must have some sway. Scaramucci got an unusual public apology, but still hired a top Manhattan lawyer to put further pressure on CNN and look after his interests in the matter, one source said. You know what's interesting is a lot of times when there's false news that comes out, what's expected is that the media retract their statement. Now, what's also interesting about that is, I'm not sure legally how this all works, but they're effectively admitting guilt by saying, it was faulty and they're sorry. And they still did it and they still slandered someone. And they have such a long history of false stories at this point that it's hard to make the argument that it was an accident. So I think he might have actually tricked CNN into hanging themselves. But it says sources also said that the three journalists responsible for the retracted story, reporter Tom Frank, editor Eric Lichtblau, and Lex Harris, who headed the CNN investigator unit, were urged to resign, and they all ended up losing their jobs. They called them in and said they'd pay out their contracts, but they should leave immediately, one source said. Zucker was afraid of facing a high-profile suit, and Scaramucci, while the U.S. Justice Department weighs the proposed $85.4 billion media merger. This is really interesting stuff. So this lawsuit, just the threat of a lawsuit, is putting into further question a possible $85.4 billion media merger. And we should all stand against this merger, because this will be one step closer to, a total monopoly on the internet, and even fewer companies will be able to push the customers around. We do not want this merger to take place. Meanwhile, a CNN insider said staffers are furious at having lost the moral high ground because of this story. Sources said Zucker tried to rally his staff during a Tuesday morning conference call. Zucker stressed that the issue was a lapse in editorial standards and said it was a lesson to all reporters and editors to continue to strive for strong, accurate reporting. The source said, yeah, give me a break. You don't care about strong, accurate reporting. This is just all a show. You're just trying to save face. At least at last week's Cannes Lions Festival in France, where Zucker boasted that viewers trust CNN more than ever. Now, does he really believe that, or is he that out of touch? I honestly don't know. Like, my initial instinct is that he can't believe that. But then, like, the more I think about it, it's like, well, maybe he actually can. Because he lives in his ivory tower where he's not around anybody, where he's not around the general public. Rumors were rough that he'd be out of a job if the AT&T deal goes through. How big would that be? Guys, we're talking about Trump potentially taking down one of the biggest mainstream media and the one that he specifically targeted more than any other, because remember, he claimed all mainstream media is pretty much fake news. Or not all, but most of it was fake news. And that CNN was especially because they were dubbed very fake news. This is very interesting. If Trump takes down one mainstream media outlet or gets the head fired and it's CNN, that really shows that all he does is win. It's not just Jeff Zucker. All Time Warner executives are anxious about if they will survive the merger, a media source said Tuesday, because Time Warner actually owns CNN. What is interesting is that AT&T executives who will decide who goes and who stays at AT&T CEO Randall Stephenson, AT&T Entertainment Group CEO John Stankey, who have a very good relationship with the current administration. President Trump, a fierce critic of CNN, publicly opposed the merger during the campaign. Sources said Scaramucci, a frequent guest on CNN to defend the president, was treated like a star at Saturday's wedding of Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and Louis Linton in Washington, D.C. I actually recently did a video on one of the AT&T members, and they're talking about putting out 5G and that kind of stuff. And AT&T has some interesting stuff going on right now, as does like just mobile internet in general. And I really actually do like AT&T. They offer really good plans, and around me anyways, and they're far better than Time Warner in my opinion. You can actually get like their quote unquote cable TV. It's not actually cable, but it's like the DSL TV, and their their Uverse they call it, and their internet combined for like a reasonably cheap price, and then you can throw on a phone for like almost free. And no, I'm not getting paid for them by them, but around me there's like Time Warner and AT&T, and I really I've had both, and AT&T was pretty good to me. Trump is thoroughly enjoying this, and Anthony got endless slaps on the back at Steve's wedding. I just love how happy they are, like slapping each other on the back. I could just envision it, can't you? The retracted story was like just he probably had this big old smile on his face, couldn't hold it back. The retracted story was based on a single anonymous source who claimed the Senate Intelligence Committee was probing ties between the Trump administration and the Russian government-owned investment fund. The story posted on CNN.com on Thursday also claimed the Treasury Department was believed to be investigating Scaramucci over a purported January 16th meeting with the fund's Director General. And in an editor's note posted late Friday, CNN said the story had been deleted for not meeting editorial standards, whatever standards those are, with the network later revealing a breakdown in pre-publication vetting that typically involves fact-checkers, journalism standards experts, and lawyers. Well, sure they have these, but come on, they're rushing all this stuff out. I think that we have gone to a place where if the media can't be trusted to report the news, then the dangerous place for America, and I think that is the place that the certain outlets are going, particularly for the purpose of spiking ratings, and if that's coming directly from the top, I think that's even more scary. And I think that we should take a really good look at what we're focused on and what we are covering, and are making sure that it's accurate and it's honest, she said. Exactly. Sarah Huckabee Sanders has it right. She's the one, she's like acting as a press secretary for Donald Trump. CNN's retraction of the Scaramucci story was the latest in a string of recent embarrassments, including the firing earlier this month of Believer series host Reza Aslan, who never should have been hired, especially given his long history of faking credentials and attacking Sam Harris like maliciously and falsely. And he's just a terrible person. After he called Trump a piece of shit on Twitter, that's like the least controversial thing he's ever done, to be honest. Like, other things he's done have been so much worse. He's he's basically an Islamist terrorist apologist. The network also fired comedian Kathy Griffin, longtime co-host of its New Year's Eve coverage, over a photo that showed her posing with a prop resembling Trump's bloody severed head, and had to own up to a story that incorrectly predicted what fired FBI Director James Comey would testify about before Congress. In fact, Comey supported Trump, and he was supposed to directly contradict Trump. Now, one other thing. This is very serious for Mark Zucker and CNN in general. This type of lawsuit is the type of lawsuit where Hulk Hogan destroyed Gawker. Gawker had to be sold, and the owner of Gawker at the time had to beg the courts to take it easy on them because they had already been damaged so badly and already had to sell, and the courts still put more on top of it to actually damage their value in sales and absolutely destroy them even more. And make it really hard for them to be sold. And the same thing could happen to CNN here. So this is very, very serious for the executives at the top. This is why they're so upset. But we've got some new notifications here, and it looks like they're launching part 2, so I'm going to get into that, and keep an eye out for my video. Please share and stuff. I just got monetized, so my videos are now monetized. I appreciate, small YouTuber like me, every share matters, every like, it makes my day. It really does. So have a great day, guys.